Their alarm going off just before 6 a.m. is the last thing either of them wants to hear, and Jacqueline clings tighter to Dominic, latching onto his back like a koala, savoring the warmth of his body. Somehow they drag themselves out of bed and their boxes down to the car within half an hour, meaning they get on the road at around the time they were hoping to, neither of them particularly excited about the near 9-hour drive ahead of them. "Oh, wait, hang on, I'll be right back." Dominic watches her in confusion from the passenger seat as she leaps out of the car and runs back up to the apartment building, leaving her door open and letting the frigid November air into the vehicle. No sooner has he loosened his seatbelt and stretched over to the door to close it when she reappears, breathless and clasping a familiar statuette in her hand. Dominic does a double take when he sees it. "Where have you been hiding that?" he asks, probably a little too loudly for the early hour. She shushes him as she pulls her door shut and shoves the Tony into the cup holder. Dominic snorts with laughter. "You can't put it there?" "Why not? It's been in the kitchen cabinet with your broken blender all this time." Dominic gapes at her and then starts to laugh and shake his head. "I thought your mom had it." "Nope." She pops thop with a smirk before pulling out into the road. "That would be where yours is." "Only because she stole it the last time she visited," he says, his hands folded over his chest and looking more like a 12-year-old than ever. "You were keeping it in the washroom. It was unhygienic." She wrinkles her nose at the memory. "I wanted people to be able to interact with it in their own way in private," he protests with a huff. "Now it's on the mantel at my parents' house and gets dusted every morning." He rolls his eyes. She reaches over and squeezes his leg. "They're proud of you," she says softly, and he relaxes instantly at her touch. "And so am I." "See, I'm definitely most proud of you," he says, lifting up the hand that rests on his leg and pressing a delicate kiss on the knuckles before guiding it back to the wheel. She rolls her eyes with a small smile. They'd agreed she would drive first so that she would stay awake, and in return, he would be buying the coffees for the entire journey, seeing as it was his grand idea to drive home instead of fly. In the end, though, it had been a good idea, allowing them to bring all their final bits and pieces back home, leaving just a suitcase-worth amount of things in their New York apartment to see them through until their final Broadway performance on Sunday. "Did you think that when I spilled that coffee over you in the corridor of the rehearsal studio, we'd ever end up here?" she asks, stopping at yet another red light in their attempt to get off the island of Manhattan. "Here?" he asks, gesturing to the award still sitting in the cup holder. "Or here?" he asks, reaching over to turn her face gently towards him, meeting her eyes with a smile. "Here," she says, spreading her arms to signify everything, accidentally knocking her hand on the window, her ring scraping against the glass with a squeak, before pulling it back and laughing at herself. "Never in my wildest dreams, babe," he says, staring adoringly at her. She smiles shyly, their gazes locked until the car behind them honks their horn, and her cheeks pink a little as she puts the car into drive and pulls away from the green light. They chatter non-stop as they slowly make their way out of the city, the traffic poor despite leaving early. They talk through their packed itinerary for the next few days ahead. Their recently amended schedule, no performances on Sunday evenings, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays, thanks to their final contract extension on Broadway, means they can take full advantage of the show also being dark on the Thanksgiving holiday in order to get out of the city for a few days. However, it also means that the producers have chosen to fill that day with press for the show. Thus, their plans include seeing Jacqueline's family tonight and Dominic's family in Revton tomorrow for Christmas, as they'll be performing in the city over the holidays, before getting picked up in preparation for appearing on national breakfast television on Thursday. In fact, the producers have arranged a whole takeover, which was both thrilling and terrifying. They both jumped at the offer to continue their roles of Sable and Jonathan in the production of Stained Glass, and the press was abuzz with the prospect of their two Tony-winning superstars returning to tread the boards in the motherland. The announcement of the new production had brought about refreshed attention on their relationship, which, even after all this time, they continue to keep private as possible, as well as a renewed interest in them as artists. The show hasn't even started rehearsing in the city, and Jacqueline has already been approached by the producers of a few promising shows. Meanwhile, Dominic's agent has had multiple calls from a couple of other directors who are attempting to coax him to Hollywood. Whilst all of these opportunities now presenting themselves are quite astounding, neither has been particularly quick to accept anything. Both are exhausted by their run on Broadway, and both are craving some quiet time to relax and to be alone together and agree on exactly where their lives are going, professionally and personally. Though in reality, they are each on the same page with the latter. They've agreed they will not take on anything new until their 6-month contract is up, and are both happy with the freedom and relief that decision has provided for them. Once they get out of Manhattan and are cruising along on the highway and have stopped twice at Starbucks, they put on music and begin to sing. She's still getting over her flu, but her slightly husky, and therefore impossibly sexy, renditions of show tunes leave him practically drooling in the passenger seat. That is, until she pushes him to the brink of tears with her take on a tearjerker. She laughs at him softly as he wipes his eyes, and he scours his playlists to seek revenge, eventually settling on a couple of crooning classics, taking advantage of his own slightly scratchy throat to add some low-level vibrato that causes her cheeks to flush pink and her pupils to dilate, and leaves her no other option but to pull over into the nearest rest stop, slam the car into park in the most secluded-looking spot, and drag him into the back seat. She falls asleep, having swapped drivers somewhere along the line. This works in Dominic's favor, though, as he is able to keep their final destination a secret until they arrive. She thinks they're headed to Revton, but in reality, he's programmed the GPS to take them to a lake. She sleeps peacefully for the remainder of the journey, completely oblivious to him switching the radio station to his favorite country music on. She stirs the moment he shuts off the engine and shuffles in her seat, looking about in confusion when she realizes it's pitch black outside. "Where are we?" she murmurs, rubbing her eyes. "Have we broken down?" "No, we're here," he says with a satisfied smirk, switching the car's headlamps back on and bathing the cottage in light. "Oh," she squeaks, eyes widening as she realizes exactly where she is. "But you agreed that we could run anywhere, and I thought that perhaps here would be best. You've been sick, and we need a break. He's unable to finish his sentence because she throws herself across the central console to hug him as tightly as she can with her seatbelt still in the way. She pulls away and puts an arm's distance between them, looking up at him with tear-filled eyes and a grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispers, dropping a soft kiss to his forehead before gathering her handbag from the back seat, jumping out of the car and hurrying like an excited child towards the cottage.